Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar, which is the last in a series of International Markets Week's pre-webinars. So this particular topic is about global opportunities in online retail. So my name is Alison Stephen. I am based in Enterprise Ireland's London office, and I am the global lead for consumer products and all things retail within Enterprise Ireland. So let me just click on the slide. So this is what we're talking about today. Hello and welcome. We are delighted that we have Minister Damian English with us, who is going to open our webinar with a few remarks. We then have a fantastic panel discussion lined up, and I will introduce our panelists in a few minutes. We have a chat box open, so if you have any questions, please put your questions into the chat box, and we will try as much as we can to answer your questions. And then we'll just have that kind of wrap up, and we will hopefully be done within an hour. So the webinar is being recorded, and we will send it out to you afterwards if you need to watch it again. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Damian English, who is the Minister of State for Employment Affairs and Retail Businesses. We're delighted to have you here, Minister, so I'm going to open the floor to you. So thanks very much.
Thanks, Alison. Good afternoon, everybody here from the Department of Enterprise. Our name might be changing slightly, but at the moment we're still in the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Employment. I'm one of the new junior ministers here, working along with Robert Troy and Thomas Leo Berg, who's our lead minister here. So part of my main focus is on the retail sector, along with employment affairs. And it's actually quite a crossover with employment affairs and retail sector too, but we won't go into that in a bit today. But mainly from a retail focus. I'm delighted to have the chance, Alison, to join with you and the team. I want to thank both Michael and Frank for their presentations as well, and looking forward to hearing them. As you know, I think you all know any of the difficulty you've had as a retail sector over the last couple of months, but we recognise as a department, as a government, the priority that sector is for this country and the massive employment that's created through it, as well as the spend as well. I know a big focus of today is around the international markets and the opportunities there as well. A big effort of ours will be to try to work with yourselves as a retail sector to develop those options, and certainly to develop the online trading as well, which we see a lot of opportunity there. So I recognise and want to acknowledge that you've been through a difficult time. From a department point of view, we've had great engagement with many in the retail sector through our retail forum. And I've said it before, but I'll say it again because we've probably people on today who aren't part of that forum. It's an invaluable contribution, we find, and an opportunity to engage with you on a regular basis, to tic-tac on the issues, but certainly during probably Brexit, but more so during COVID, to be able to have you there as a team to think back with on a regular basis, check things off, make sure we're moving in the right direction. It's been very beneficial. I hope it's a two-way thing, but certainly from my officials here and talking to Heather Humphreys before me, it was certainly very worthwhile, and we were glad with that as well. Sorry, I realised that the webcam wasn't working. Apologies there. So we're certainly glad to have that engagement with you, and we want to strengthen that and work on that. And I'm delighted that Enterprise Ireland are holding a lot of seminars like this, but also are doing more and more increasingly in the space with the retail sector too. I recently launched the second round of the online retail scheme. I think that's another strong contribution, over 5 million allocated there, or will be allocated in the weeks ahead. That scheme closes at the end of the month, but it's another offering through Enterprise Ireland to match up the IT skills and to increase the offering online as well. So I think from the first round, there was about 193 odd applicants were successful on that. So we hope that, again, if this scheme is successful this round, we can make the case for extra funding for it as well, and can continue to develop in that space with EI and others as well. So again, I'm conscious that at the moment, with all the challenges you have in front of you, we are faced with difficult months ahead of us. So I'm glad that at this time, probably where you are trying to stabilise and rebuild and just refocus. I'm very much encouraged by everyone's interest in today's event, but also in looking ahead to see how we can adapt and prepare your business and the whole retail sector for the new and for the emerging opportunities as well. And I'm very conscious, a lot of the conversations I've had individually with the various retail groups and your representative bodies is around just getting through these couple of months, but also to make sure that we're back in a position of growth again as quickly as we possibly can. I know for many it's survival mode for a couple of months, but we have to always be looking ahead and making sure that we're ready for that as well, which you are, and that's what we're trying to do. So I certainly have a major focus on the retail sector and a consumer business point of view. The Taoiseach is very keen in this area too. So all these events we feed back into them as well. But as a department, we certainly will be working with you a lot in the months ahead. I think again, to recognise, I mean, there's over 300,000 people working in the sector, so we do see it. While there's difficulties in the months ahead, but what we do see is a lot of opportunity as well. And I think you're all more even familiar than I am with the opportunities with online trading. Quite a lot of that market share is going outside from Irish companies, and we want to try to win some of that market share back, but as well as increase the amount of international market share that we can win as well, because a lot of retail that I've met over the last few months, they do realise that there are opportunities to trade abroad, and that's what we want to try and do as much as we possibly can as well. The COVID-19 pandemic has presented an urgent priority for business to accelerate the growth of that online offering. I know from looking back over your agendas the last couple of years, that was in discussion anyway, and you were making plans for that. But because of COVID, it's become a lot more urgent. I spent the morning talking to a lot of people in the education system, and similar there, they've had the conversation for years about providing more and more courses online, but that just overnight has completely changed, and now they really have to focus on moving online and with that discussion. So it's a similar to yourselves as well, but I think most people are ready for that. It's just how we can enable that journey, how we can work with you, how we can aid it, how we can learn from experts like yourself, Alison, like Frank, and from Michael as well. That's what we're going to try and do. So again, just to finish up, I'm very committed to supporting this ambition and assisting Irish retail business to increase their digital presence and boost online sales. And the department are very committed to that, allowing time to target new and existing customers and shoppers in the online space. There are opportunities there, and we have to try to grab them. Today's Global Insights webinar further supports this agenda, sharing knowledge on global consumer changes and new emerging opportunities worldwide. And that's why I'm glad to be able to stay on for a while. I apologise in advance, Ali. The Dáil schedule here, for those of you who are based in Ireland will recognise we've had a few interesting days when it comes to the Dáil. So the agenda is all over the place. So at any stage I could be called over to the other house across the road in Dáil, and so apologies if I might just have to nip off at some stage, but I'll try to listen in for as long as I can. I'll be very interested in the presentations, but also in the discussion around that and the questions and answers as well. So hopefully we'll get more opportunities in the future to join your webinars, but also to physically maybe to meet to discuss these things as well. But I look forward to working with the sector in the years ahead, and I'm delighted that EI takes a prominent role in this as well. So thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Minister, and we understand you're a very busy guy, so we're very grateful to have you here for as long as we possibly can have you. So thank you for that. We have a wonderful panel that are going to be talking with us about global online, and I'd like to introduce them. First of all, we have Michael Walsh, who is the Marketing Director of one of Ireland's most well-known consumer brands, Dubarry of Ireland. And we have Frank van den Berg, who is based in the UK. He's a Dutch national, and he is an expert in global marketplaces. So Michael, if I can ask you first of all just to say hello, who you are, that'd be great. Thank you.
Hi Alison, and everybody participating on the webinar. Yes, my name is Michael Walsh, and I'm the Marketing Director here at Dubarry. We're based in Ballinasloe in the eastern part of County Galway, and our business is primarily in the footwear, clothing, leather goods and accessories business. So we have our headquarters based here in Ballinasloe. We have our design team of 5 people. We have our quality assurance. We have all of our centralized HR functionality, finance, sales and marketing, all based out of this building here in Ballinasloe. And then in addition to that, we have 4 main fulfillment centres around the world. We have our main warehouse here in Ballinasloe. We have a warehouse in Chipping Norton near Oxford in the UK. We have a warehouse in Utrecht in the Netherlands, and we have a warehouse in Pennsylvania in the USA. We have 3 retail stores, one in College Green in Dublin, one in Chelsea in London, and the 3rd store in Cheltenham. And we've just opened a pop-up retail store in Pennsylvania in the USA in the last 2 to 3 weeks. From a digital marketing e-commerce perspective, our e-com team are based here at head office in Ballinasloe, and then what we have is regional digital marketing teams based in each of the 4 main regions in Ireland, the UK, Europe, and in the US. And I suppose from our perspective, We started off life primarily as a sailing footwear brand, and over the years we've evolved into sailing, still a very important part of our business, but also country lifestyle. So we do a lot of leather Gore-Tex line boots, outerwear jackets, wax cottons, Gore-Tex line clothing, leather bags, and a whole host of accessories. So that's Dubarry.
Great, thank you, Michael. So Frank, let's hear from you.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Hello, my name is Frank Vandenberg. I'm a Dutch national at home in Norwich in the UK. I started my career in online 15 years ago when I was the first international e-commerce director within General Motors. And as such, I rolled out web shops, websites in 45 countries internationally. And I put up the first online trading portal for our dealers. 10 years ago, I stepped out of the corporate life and started my company, which is now InfinityBlue Marketplaces. Now, to give you a bit of an idea what our background is, my background is very much that we have offices in Amsterdam, Cambridge, Chicago, Leeds, Shanghai, Sao Paulo, and Warsaw. So we have that international experience that we can share with you today. We have about 100 clients that we work with day in, day out to help them set up and improve their marketplace performance on companies like Amazon, Tmall, Wayfair, and 6-7 other marketplaces. For many companies, we function as the outsourced e-commerce department, and we cover the United States, Europe, China, and recently also Latin America. Alison, yeah, I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you for the invitation, and yeah, we have the information and experience that we would love to share with you to help enable the online journey, so to speak. Thank you, Alison.
Brilliant. Thank you, Frank, and thank you, Michael. So let's get on to the meat of the conversation. So the global opportunity for online retail, I mean, everybody knows we're all shopping online. E-commerce sales have really gone through the roof over the past 6 months. But maybe to ask you, Frank, specifically, in terms of that bigger picture, which are the biggest e-commerce markets in the world, and which are the growing fast, the ones that are growing the fastest?
Okay, thank you, Alison. The overall picture is that e-commerce takes up, B2C e-commerce takes up about 15% of the total retail sector. In the UK and Ireland, it's probably a little bit more. In other countries, it is less. It differs by category, but also very much by region and by country. The largest country in terms of e-commerce is China. And there are many different statistics around, but China is bigger in terms of e-commerce, B2C e-commerce than America. And the last pictures I have seen from Statistica show that actually, and listen to this, that China is as big as the United States and Europe together. If you look at Europe only, then of course Europe is massive. It's growing quickly, still at 10% per year roughly. And within Europe, the UK is the largest B2C online market, followed by Germany and France. So in terms of countries and growth, that shows a little bit of the perspective, the picture. Okay.
And Michael, just to ask you, you're operating across the globe. What's doing well for you in terms of countries? You're on mute, I think.
Our major market would be the UK, followed by the US, and then Germany, Benelux, the domestic Irish market, France, and Scandinavia, and they would be our major markets. We don't have a business in the Asian world. Our brand is primarily focused around country lifestyle activity, which doesn't have a resonance with that particular audience.
Okay. And I remember years ago we were being told that only certain products sell online. So in terms of mattresses, for example, you're never going to sell products online. And now there are a number of kind of pure play online retailers for that particular sector. So Frank, again, I guess to ask you, which products sell well, particularly online?
Well, the question is almost the other way around. Which product is not selling well online at the moment, right, with the current COVID situation? But there is some graduations or some scales to indicate. If you look pre-COVID, it was mainly, the overall online share of retailing was about 15%. I mentioned that, but it differs very much per category. For instance, online retailing of electronics took care of almost 50% of all sales in that sector, whereas for food and drinks it was only 3 or 4%. Now, in this COVID, and I know we come to that later, with COVID, things have changed dramatically. Electronics is still 50% maybe, but the food and drinks have tripled as market share of the total category. The same for home products, the same for garden products also. So you've seen a very significant increase of the online market share across almost all categories. And I wouldn't be surprised if for some categories the market share has tripled. And I think overall, the market share of the online market share of retail has probably maybe doubled.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
there's something I read this morning that John Lewis in the UK, their sales have gone from being, I think, 40% online to well over 60% now. So, and that's kind of cross product category. I hate to bring it up, like we're going to be talking about the C word, COVID. So, Michael, in terms of the past 6 months, how has COVID affected Dubarry, particularly online?
Well, I suppose in terms of the bricks and mortar retail impact has been catastrophic. Our own retail stores were closed. We have 500 retail stockists across the world, most of whom were closed, with the exception of a couple of countries that managed to maintain retail open. So that's the negative, and that's been very, very significant. Obviously, the positive, as Frank has alluded to there, in relation to online, it saw a very, very significant increase. And it was impacted by, I suppose, a couple of different factors. For us, the work from home phenomenon, it proved favorable to us. So we were in a spring season where, we had a range of deck shoes, casual wear, polo shirts, shorts, all of which sold extremely well. And as I said, that was influenced by the work from home. The other area where we got a very positive bounce was sailing was one of the first sports to come back, probably alongside golf and tennis. And when sailing came back, people were out on the water, people weren't traveling abroad on holidays. So we would have seen quite a significant boost in our sales of sailing boots. And even now, looking forward and trying to predict what the autumn presents to us, given the restrictions on people's movement, we see the whole emphasis on outdoor activity being also quite favorable for us, because we're very much an outdoor brand. So people are out walking their dogs, they're out their horses, they're spending more time in the rural countryside than they are in the cities. But just coming back to the negative impact in terms of bricks and mortar retailer, we've seen that especially in the cities. The cities, I mean, Dublin city centre is like a ghost town. I was up there last Tuesday week, and it was like, the Sunday morning after Rugby International. There was nobody on the street, and that was lunchtime on a Tuesday. So it has been very, very significant.
Okay. So a question for you, Frank. Crystal ball time. What do you think is going to be happening next year, 3 years time, 5 years time, this whole COVID impact? Any predictions for longer term?
Well, I think we've mentioned some of it already. I think 2 or 3 things. I think China nobody can have an online strategy without at least featuring China in there, even if they decide not to go there. That's clear. The United States and the rest of Europe will have to feature in that also. The other thing to do with COVID is that COVID, I think, has really helped the online sector jump up a notch. And I don't think it will continue at double the market share that it currently has, but I think it probably has added 50% to the market share ongoing. I would not be surprised. And you know how it is. You need to buy online something 3 or 4 or 5 times, sometimes 10 times, but then it becomes part of your daily routine. Well, our neighbors are 80 and 90 years old, and they buy online now. So it has really boosted everything. And there's one other trend that I think I wanted to mention at the start of the webinar, and that is the importance of marketplaces. People need to be very aware of that, because there is research that shows that retailers are underestimating this. And the fact of the matter is that you need to be aware that marketplaces are literally eating e-commerce. Previously in Europe, 20% of retail sales, online retail sales, went through marketplaces. Currently, it's 40% across Europe. But in the United States, it's already 60 to 70%. Amazon alone has 50% of the online market share. Another thing that people really need to be aware of, because we're slightly behind the curve in that development, but I see that continue, is that in the United States, when people want to buy something online, more than half go to Amazon. They don't go to Google, they go to Amazon. And that will happen in Europe also. And in China, marketplaces are 95% of the online sales. So literally marketplaces are eating e-commerce, and that's an important thing for looking forward.
Okay, interesting. Right, I'm going to move on a little bit now. So again, if we're talking about routes to market, particular geographies, I'm going to ask you, Frank, again. Sorry if I feel like I'm picking on you. A really basic question. Just explain to us all what D2C means or what you mean by marketplace, and then maybe about pros and cons of each.
Okay, D2C is when brand and manufacturers go directly and sell directly to the customer. So cutting out retailers, cutting out the middleman, so to speak. D2C is often associated with online, but potentially you can start selling direct to end customers also offline, of course. With marketplaces, I mean a web shop, a website that's owned by a third party that provides a service like on a marketplace, a physical marketplace. You can open a shop, you facilitate that there is the key things for that marketplace to work, like a financial platform, a listings platform, so people can lay out what the wares are, and they fulfill the transactions. Beyond that, examples are Amazon, Tmall, Wayfair, eBay, etc. Beyond that, marketplaces differ massively. There are about 1,000, 1,500 different marketplaces. They all are different.
Okay.
In terms of routes to market, and Michael, I'm sure will have some views on that later, but if you look at the online routes to market, there are really two fundamental ones. The one is marketplaces, of course, which has grown and grown and grown. The other one is the more traditional web shop, where a brand or a manufacturer or retailer has its own website and sells different brands. And you can buy on site. I call that a web shop. Now, web shops are great because you control the content. And you can tailor that to your individual customer. So when that is important for you, if you really want your customer to have a specific customer experience that is associated with your brand, then web shops are still very, very important and the first thing to go to. However, if you don't want to be bothered with setting up payment solutions, organizing logistics, organizing listings, looking for customers, etc., marketplaces are the easy route forward. It's easy for internationalization. It's a fantastic ecosystem. It's not for nothing that Amazon is by far the largest retailer now. But it is not, forces for courses. It's not always and only marketplaces for everyone.
Sure. Which leads me on to Michael. So you've been selling direct to consumers for 10, 12 years or so.
Yes,
why did you pick that route and not the marketplace's route?
I suppose our direct to consumer strategy has been done by three channels primarily: online, own retail, and the third element for us is what we call event marketing. So that's where we go and attend publicly attended events, like, for example, in Ireland, the Dublin Horse Show or the Ploughing Championships. We do events in, Chelsea Flower Show, Cheltenham Races, Burley Horse Trials. On average, we're probably attending between 275 and 300 events a year worldwide, with teams of our own people who are engaging with the end users. So and that was very much the catalyst for kind of building the awareness of the brand. So what we found was a difficulty, particularly when we launched our country lifestyle collection. We had a barrier to getting our products listed by retailers because they didn't quite understand, a Gore-Tex lined leather boot at 225 quid compared to a rubber boot at 50 quid. And so there was a huge marketing and selling job to be done And we decided we would do that ourselves by going to events, by working to build the brand awareness. And the consequence of that was brand awareness lifted, third-party retailers wanted to become stockists of ours. We opened our own retail stores. First store we opened was in 2012. And our online presence is probably in its 13th, 14th year now at the moment. And we've just completed a very significant replatforming exercise just at the latter part of 2019. And then obviously we have, in addition to all of that, we have our wholesale channel, which is the third party retailers, which is still the largest part of our business. The split at the moment is approximately 60-40, 40 through the D2C channels and 60% through wholesale. For us, marketplaces is a phase 2 initiative, and in fact we've just commenced a trial in the US. It was supposed to have started back in February, but because of COVID it got kicked down the road a little. So it has just started in the last 2 to 3 weeks, and you know, we understand and accept the significance of marketplaces. What's really important for us is how we present ourselves on those marketplaces, how we retain our brand identity, and that's really important to us. And they've certainly, people like Amazon have evolved their offering over time to give brands landing pages where you can preserve the integrity of your brand identity. I think that's really important. And okay. I suppose for us, in terms of, you know, one of the questions that has come up previously in terms of, you know, getting started, where do you get started in terms of developing an online presence? And for us, the obvious place to start is the market that is either your biggest market or the market that you understand best, where there are the least barriers, be it you know, language, culture, whatever else. But start in the market where you have either the best understanding or the biggest current sales level, because that's the, you know, that's the critical mass that you're going to need to kind of develop forward.
Okay, that makes sense. Frank, any tips about how companies should decide on which market and which marketplaces? Is that an unfair question because we're all different?
Yeah, I completely agree with Michael. If you start off, take a country that you understand best, because then your learning will be easiest, and set out to learn. That has to be part of the pilot that you're running, right? And be clear what you want to learn. Once you have that on board and you know the basics, then the world is your oyster, so to speak. There are different ways of rolling out. You can do it all by yourself, slowly build your team, and then it will go slower, but you have the capabilities in-house. You can literally also take an outsource. You can work with outsourced teams, and that almost becomes inevitable if you go to the United States, to Germany, Europe, and also to China. So there is something to be learned there. And then suddenly it doesn't really make so much difference anymore whether you go to Germany, France, or even China. And one thing I wanted to share with you was really two things. Previously, a lot of discussions about where do you go first came from, so we go to Germany, France, Italy first. And I think that is still relevant, but with the advent and the progress of marketplaces and solutions like that, the experience that we have with successful retailers is that, yes, they try first in the country, and I completely agree with Michael, but once you have the basic understanding and that you know that you can make it work, start looking at a region rather than a country. For instance, Europe, Amazon is set up. When you start in Amazon in the UK, it's relatively little effort to switch on Amazon France, Germany, etc. And one other thing to mention is that if you start working with outsourced agencies, outsourced support, and inevitable that will have to happen one time in your expansion, then start thinking slightly differently also. For instance, we've been working with retailers who want to go to China, because they're already in Europe, they want to go to China or the United States. And actually everybody's thinking, well, the United States will be easier because you have that language. And that makes a lot of sense. But it's not always the case, because the FDA is very tough to deal with, whereas in China, that is relatively easy. Alcohol is a pain in the neck to sell in the United States. You're much better off trying that in China first. And I'm not saying that China is better. No, that's not what I'm saying. So you have horses for courses, and you really need to ask and discuss with a few people what they think, and then assimilate that type of information.
Okay. So we've actually had a question come in on the chat box for Frank about China. So the questioner says the Chinese market is challenging to enter for various reasons: language, closed social channels. Does Frank have any recommendations for reducing these barriers to market? And second part, which are the leading marketplaces that specialize in luxury and non-discounted product?
Okay, yeah, thank you for the question. There are different ways of getting into China. You have the regulators in China have done this very well, actually. There's the domestic market. If you want to go on Tmall domestic or JD domestic, you need to set up your own company in China. You need to pay local taxes, etc. That is complicated. That takes time. But they've also set up what they call the e-commerce channel, and basically it's almost tax-free, it's regulation-free. It's not a free-for-all, but it's a lot easier to get into the country. Product approvals are easier. And to be very honest, it is as easy to get into China with all of these things as it is to get into Poland, for instance. It really doesn't make that much difference anymore. And if you want to, how would you then do that? And there are companies out there, and yes, we are one of them, but there are loads of other things. So I'm not talking for our company here. But I would like you to know as an audience that there are companies out there that basically are your outsourced team. And you just talk to us, or you talk to somebody in China, and they have those teams ready there. And it is becoming so important also for Tmall, which is the largest marketplace out there, that Tmall says if you were to knock on the door of Tmall as a merchant, they would actually ask, who do you use as your third-party service provider? Because also for them it is better. So there are different ways of expansion. And if you work with a third-party service provider, there are more than us, it is really not all that complex. It's expensive, but all the complexity that people think it has are not half as big as people think. I hope that answered the question. Oh, there was a question about luxury brands. To be honest, I need to ask my guys in China that Tmall has, I think, 80% now, because they've acquired some other marketplaces. I think Tmall Global has about 80% of the cross-border e-commerce channel at the moment. So you probably have to be there anyway.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Frank. You make it sound very easy to enter the Chinese market if you have the right partners, I guess.
Well, yeah, you would say that, but I'm really not preaching that. It is, people need to be aware that that is a way of expansion that is available to everybody. And if Irish companies don't do it, Mr. English, if Irish companies don't do it, the English will do it, the Dutch will do it, or the others will do it. So people need to be aware of it.
Sure, okay. So I hope that answers the question. So thank you for the question. Right, I think we're going to move on a little bit. Okay, so it's a big world out there. There are huge opportunities. Everyone's buying online. So Michael, I'm going to ask you first of all. So how did you start? I mean, it's a really basic question. Did you just launch the site, or did you do any research, any planning? What did that look like all those years ago?
I suppose back in that day, it was really it was almost just recreating your catalog online. So your hard copy catalog, you got that uploaded online. But I mean that world has moved on, you know, in complexity, certainly in the last number of years. I mean, I would say getting a website up and running is really only phase one. You know, it's like, I suppose I'd liken it to, I mentioned the catalog. You know, getting the website up and running is like printing the catalog. The next step in terms of online is how are you going to drive traffic into that website? So, you know, you've got your catalog delivered in the warehouse. How are you now going to get it out into people's hands? And I think that's, you know, there's a huge challenge there for businesses. Put a huge amount of effort and time into getting a website up and running. And when it's up and running, then they're asking themselves, well, you know, where's the business? So you've got to be thinking in parallel about how you're going to bring traffic into that website. For us, I suppose what we've learned and we've had probably 3 different iterations of our website. Key thing is a good project manager, absolutely essential. One central project manager with whom the buck stops. Ideally, an in-house e-commerce expert if you can afford it. If not, it's maybe something you need to outsource, but it will save you time and it will save you money. Really important that you know, when you sit down as a phase 1 development, that you map out the customer journeys. You know, you take all the different potential customer journeys that people are going to experience when they come into your website, because if you map out those and, you know, draw them out, it will hit all the kind of touch points of interaction with those customers in terms of fulfillment, in terms of customer service, in terms of delivery. You know, if you're a retailer, for example, you know, the question for you is, are you going to operate out of a central warehouse stock that's going to satisfy online? Or if you've got 25 retail outlets, are you going to allow that website to read the stock in your individual outlets and the degree of complexity that entails? Is it in one language? Is it multilingual? Are you offering different currency options? You know, there are a lot of considerations, and you need to think that through really, really carefully, because it's a lot of times people get involved in a project, and when they get to a point, you know, they realize that really the infrastructure that's required in terms of how you fulfill, how the whole chain of communication, once somebody places an order with you, your returns and exchanges policy, you know, it's a whole host of issues. So I would say a really, really good project manager, ideally internally, but if not externally, is absolutely essential.
Okay, good advice, absolutely. So to ask you, Frank, if you're a new company, or if you're a company who's new to e-commerce, what would you suggest to do first? You know, first thing tomorrow morning, open the laptop. What would you be doing first? Thinking, right, we're going to sell online, but now what?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I think the see whether you can find somebody that can help answer questions that you have. In fact, the best question I've ever been asked in this whole online journey stuff is, I met with somebody and said, Frank, I need somebody that tells me what questions to ask, because you don't know what you don't know, and it sounds a little bit theoretical, but how smart a question is that? I need somebody to help me ask the right questions. Once you're there, and Michael has mentioned a lot of things already. How do you bring people to the party? How do you get things organized? And it differs by country, it differs by platform or marketplace. So yeah, find somebody that can help you identify the key things, and whether that's Enterprise Island or other people, colleagues, etc. All of those things are important.
Yep, ask for help. There have been people who've been there and done it before.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Michael, I'm going to ask you for your top tips. So what have you done well? What's worked well for you? Also, can you fess up to any mistakes that you made? Because there's always a learning and things which haven't gone well.
Yeah, I would say it depends, of course, whether you're a brand like ourselves or a retailer. But for us, we've placed great value on having really good visual assets. And having really good visual assets allows you to create really good content, and that's really important in the online world, because I mean, we've been talking about websites. We haven't even touched on social media and the impact that social media has, and I suppose it's how all of your channels are connected, and your communication and the consistency of communication across the different channels. So for us, good visual assets, good content, good storytelling, really, really important to build up that, because for us as a brand, what we've tried to do is create a sense of kind of brand community. We've tried to bring people together under the Dubarry brand umbrella by sharing their involvement with our brand. So we're into what we call UGC, which is user generated content. So, you know, what you have is this range of Dubarry community personnel, whether they're in the US or whether they're in Scandinavia or whether they're in the UK, it doesn't really matter. They have a common interest in outdoor activity, in their dogs, and you know, they love to share photographs of their dogs or their horses. And invariably, what we do is we run a lot of competitions. We have a couple of themes. One is, where do you go on yours? The other is, what do you do in yours? and we try and get them, because in order for them to compete in those competitions, they have to send in photographs of them wearing our products. You know, you get some fantastic content when you do that, because people are engaged, and it has greater, I suppose, credibility, because it's seen as being almost editorially independent of us as a brand. But that's really important. And the brand message also needs to be really consistent across all of your channels. So from your website to your social media channels, really important to have that consistency. And absolutely essential is good customer service and communication. That is absolutely essential in terms of, from the moment somebody, you know, presses pay or order now, it's the chain of communication thereafter, in terms of, you know, your order is going to be delivered, or thank you for your order, we'd send on shipping details, and then it gets handed over to DHL or DPD, and then people get a text message. So your communication is really, really important. I suppose in terms of mistakes for us, thankfully we haven't made too many, but I would say setting realistic deadlines for projects, bearing in mind that, you know, there's often several external partners involved, so getting projects delivered on time and within budget, maybe that's an area we could have been better in over the years. But I think at the end of the day, the end product was really good and did what we wanted it to do. Another area for us, again, in terms of the marketing and the digital marketing, in addition to the e-commerce, is the whole area of influencers and bloggers. You know, we've been very fortunate that we have a very strong following from a lot of well-known celebrities. So we had Kate Middleton visit Ireland earlier this year with her husband, and featured wearing a Dubarry jacket. We had just very recently, there was International Dog Day. I didn't know there was such a thing, but David Beckham posted a photograph of himself and his dogs out in the countryside in Oxfordshire, and that's a great opportunity to capitalise on the celebrity endorsement for the brand as well.
Have you got dog boots yet for Dubarry?
Yeah, we're working on it, because you'll double your pairage.
Very good.
Maybe can I come in on that also, Alison?
Sure, absolutely.
Just building on Michael's story, on the social media and the influencing side, even on marketplaces, that's becoming more and more important now. So previously you might say, oh, I'm going on Amazon, I advertise on Amazon, that does the trick. But the storytelling on market platforms is just harder. So doing that offline through social media across the world is becoming a lot more important than it used to be. And the other thing I just wanted to mention here is that when we work with our companies and our clients, often companies assume that the USP that they have, whether that's a strong brand or a low price or a new product, actually will work for them in other countries also. And that is not necessarily the case at all. In terms of brand explanation, brand storytelling, that's not easy. You need to be able to translate that to the local, so that it gets local relevance. Pricing, you know, it's hard to compare our delivered costs from here to another country to local producers for it. So you need to do a little bit of research. And the one biggest mistake I've seen companies make is that they said, okay, we have a fantastic product, and therefore it will be seen as a fantastic product in other countries. But in essence, they had a fantastic product 3 or 4 years ago, but the USP now is really volume and economies of scale. And if you then go to another country where you have other competitors that maybe do sell the same product, you can't compete anymore, because you kind of misunderstand, or you haven't checked whether your USP is valid, whether it is really unique, whether it's a real story, a selling point that you can articulate.
Yep. Okay. All right. So just to remind you, we have got that chat box open. So we've had a couple of questions come in, but yeah, we've got, how long have we got left? About 10, 15 minutes left. So get your questions in the next few minutes. So the next thing, I guess, is about that consumer, and there's been talk in the past few minutes about using social. I mean, I deal with lots of Irish companies, and they love to use social, but they think it's expensive. So getting influencers and bloggers and paying for all this kind of stuff Is it expensive, Michael? What does that look like? Do you have to pay cleats to wear your boots?
It can no. Thankfully, we didn't. But I suppose what we do as a brand is we try and put ourselves in the best position and the best place that you're going to attract that type of audience. So, for example, we attend a lot of equestrian events, and by its nature, it attracts a particular clientele. And we've been very fortunate over the years that a lot of the members of the royal family are very active in their outdoor pursuits, including the Queen herself, who wears our boots, Princess Anne, who wears our boots, and they have a strong affiliation with the equestrian world. But for us, the real issue for us is it's about quality rather than quantity. So we're not necessarily looking at that blogger or influencer that has 5 zillion followers. We're more interested in how relevant they are to our brand, how relevant they are to our product. And what we find in many cases is some of the influencers that we work with are really happy to work in exchange for product or for very little financial return because they like the association with the brand. That's a very different situation if you want to get the endorsement of some of the mega celebrities. You're into a different world. But for us, that doesn't apply. We're after quality rather than quantity. And at the end of the day, whether you're a brand or whether you're a retailer, your cheapest form of promotion is your own product. And if your product is desirable, then you can use your product as leverage or as payment to acquire that the services of those influencers or bloggers in return. And we have found that has worked really well for us.
Great, good stuff. So Frank, I just want to ask you about finding consumers, engaging consumers, getting them to buy your products, getting them to be advocates. We've talked about social. What about things like SEO? What kind of tips do you have for that kind of thing in terms of finding and using consumers?
Okay. Yeah, SEO is important for web shops. When you go on Google, you need to make sure that your websites, your advertisements are optimized for search engines. And I think Michael mentioned this already. I'm not sure, but search engines in France work with different keywords, even if you translate it in English, than in the UK or in Germany. So you really have to localize your SEO strategy, your pay-per-click strategy similarly. People might not know, but I wanted to mention that, for instance, on marketplaces, things work exactly the same. There is pay-per-click promotion that you can work on. You can optimization of the text, so the keywords that people are looking for and search with are also very, very relevant. And here's a little secret: when people go on Amazon, they use different keywords than when they go to Google.
Really?
Well, let me put it that way. It's not a one-to-one match. Yeah, it's not a one-to-one match.
Okay, interesting. So we've had a few questions come in. I've got a couple for Michael. So somebody's asking about those new digital marketing skills. Is it something you have in-house or something that you outsource?
It was initially something we had to outsource because we didn't have the skills in-house, but now thankfully we have, because we've been able to build up scale and critical mass, we've been able to bring those people on board ourselves. So yes, we're very fortunate that we have our own team in-house. But when you're starting out, as Frank said earlier on, you need to look around and ask questions of people. If you don't have that expertise, then you have no option but to go outside.
Okay.
The one thing I would say to people is, in that space, when you're going out, if you don't understand what somebody is saying back to you, don't pretend you understand. It's a jargon-filled world. If you don't understand it, stop and get them to explain it to you. You need to understand it because you're going to make some big decisions about your money or your company's money, and you need to, you can't walk into it blindly. So, make sure that you get it explained properly to you, and deal with somebody who speaks your language, not somebody who goes off in a jargon-filled splurge.
Absolutely, great advice. Right, another question from Michael. We will launch a golf product in January 2021 as a global product. Do you advise working with marketplaces approach or distributor approach in priority markets, which are Ireland, the UK, US, Germany, and Canada?
I mean, I suspect in a situation where, where probably somebody like Amazon has a really, really strong golf audience. Like if you want to try and start from scratch and build up a profile with golfers, what's going to give you that momentum if you haven't already got a presence either in those markets or you haven't got an online presence? I suspect that marketplaces would be a very obvious place to get yourself up to that level of critical mass.
Okay. Another question for you, Michael. Okay, how does Dubarry handle potential channel conflict with the third-party retailers when selling direct to consumer?
Yeah, interesting. I mean, when we made the decision originally to go online, which is about 10, 12 years ago, at that time we made a decision that we did not allow any of our third-party retailers to sell online. So we did it ourselves initially. And then what we did was, on a kind of a gradual basis, we allowed retailers to sell our products online, provided they met with certain criteria. And for sure, channel conflict is an issue, because if you're a retailer, you're competing in many cases against the brands that are supplying you. I think what we have done and worked really well and engaged well with our retail partners, I suppose the first thing and the most critical thing is we never undercut them on price. And that's really important, because there's nothing more frustrating for a retailer than to have the brand sell cheaper than them. So we have a consistent policy in relation to price. So we never sell below our recommended retail price on our website. And that's giving a level playing field to retailers. And what we've also done is we've engaged with them in terms of providing them with the visual assets. So we have a library of all of our visuals that they can access to use on their website. So there's a very positive, constructive engagement back and forth with the retailers. And what we find, to be honest with you, I mean, I think I mentioned it earlier on, what we find is, some of our retailers are really, really good at kind of localized customer service, and they can steal a march on us because of their local presence. And that's what makes that engagement with the local retailer really important. So I think in many cases, the edge that they will have on us is, okay, the product is there, the size, the color, the price is pretty much consistent. But a lot of people will opt to deal with the local business because of good customer service and good communication.
Mm-hmm. Okay, brilliant. Thank you. One more. There has been a large number of retail bankruptcies accelerating online. Does the panel envisage a return to bricks and mortar retail or further acceleration of online? So I'll put that to Frank first of all.
No, I think we haven't seen the end of the growth of the online share. I think that will continue to grow. But here is something interesting also. There is an interesting impact of the interaction between the different channels, and Michael mentioned that already. But funnily enough, during COVID, you saw a lot of specific products increase in sales. Homeware, I mentioned them already, food and drinks, etc. But you know what? On the fashion side, there was not such a big jump. So one of the things you start realizing is actually the multi-channel interaction is important. Why didn't fashion go up that much? We think it's partly because people couldn't go out shopping in the high street. And so there is always a place for high street. There's always a place for online. And the interaction between the two of them, if you are a company that can do both, is important. And Michael gave some points for that already. Yeah, that's all I would say to him.
You got any insight, Michael?
Yeah, I think I don't like to be coming towards the end of the seminar. I don't want to be sounding a negative note, but I think we haven't seen the end of the damage on the high street. I think there's more to come. The UK is probably seeing it disproportionately more than we are here in Ireland because of the dominance of really large multiples. I mean, I walked into, I live in Galway City, and I walked into one of the shopping centres, or the entrance to one of the shopping centres last Saturday morning. There's one shop remaining of 8, and the 7 that are gone were all UK multiples. They've all gone, and that is going to, that's going to leave a lot of gaps on the high street. Maybe there's enterprising people out there that can come up with ideas for pop-up shops and maybe get some of the local businesses back onto the street, because one of the things that had happened pre-Celtic Tiger and even in more recent years is we've seen a kind of a sterilization of our high streets with with mobile phone shops, and it would be great to see the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker come back onto the high street again, and see people engage with local businesses. And I think we saw a lot of that in the early stages of the pandemic, where people shopped locally. They went to the local butcher, they went to their local shops, and hopefully, if there's any good to come out of this, that'll be a positive.
Yeah, absolutely. So my own view is, the whole UK high street, for example, was really struggling pre-COVID, and this COVID nightmare has meant that we're now shopping more online, we're now shopping more locally. So the likes of Co-op in the UK, they're opening more stores because we're all shopping closer to home. So the death of the high street, it's not dying, it's just evolving, I think. So that's my tuppence worth. So I'm aware we're very close to running out of time. I just want to mention a couple of Enterprise Ireland supports for Enterprise Ireland companies. So in April of this year, the Enterprise Ireland launched the Sustaining Enterprise Fund. And this is a substantial financial offer for Enterprise Ireland companies. I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but just to say, if you are interested, it's a fantastic scheme to contact your development advisor directly. Second thing, some of you will be aware that every year we have our International Markets Week, and this year is no exception, but we are doing it online, we're doing it virtually. And for Enterprise Ireland clients, they can meet one-to-one with our international market advisors like myself. We have 40 offices around the world, and you get some real quality one-to-one time with the international market advisors. So there is a link that you can follow to register. There's also an email address there. So yeah, we encourage you to get involved, and we'd be delighted to meet up with you from the comfort of our living rooms. So yeah, the links are there. Sustaining Enterprise Fund. The Minister mentioned the online retail scheme, which has been incredibly popular. And I think the closing date is around about the 28th of September. So please take a look at that. So that's it, guys. I just want to say a very big thank you. So first of all, thank you to Minister English. He has been on the line since the beginning, and he's still with us. So obviously there was some very interesting content that was much more interesting than the Parliament. So thank you for staying with us, Minister. Thank you very much to Frank and to Michael. Some really great practical insight, and yeah, we have been working on this for 2 or 3 weeks now, and you've been incredibly supportive and willing and able. So thank you very much for that. And I would like to thank you for attending. I think we had about 120 signed up to attend, so really strong interest. And the recording is available, so you can watch it again and again and again if you've finished with Netflix. So thank you very much and have a great day. Goodbye now.
Thank you, Alison. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.